Hello everyone, I am Divya Mittal and this is the second video on my series on civil services interview. A lot of you posted comments on my video, the first video on civil services interview, and also mailed me regarding some queries. So this video tries to answer some of those questions and also tries to answer some other frequently asked queries or doubts that people have about the interview process. Okay, first of all, please make sure that you know exactly the documents that you're supposed to take to the interview, especially the photograph. If you do forget the photograph, you will be sent back to get it. So please try to avoid a situation like that. Go through the link mentioned below and make sure you know what you have to do in the interview. Now, we've seen in certain cases the photographs of the candidates were challenged by the interviewer, saying that you do not look like this photograph. So please don't panic. Say that you will get a new one clicked after the interview and come back and submit it. Although it's obviously preferable to avoid this situation altogether by getting a new photograph clicked. So in certain cases, especially for gentlemen OTs, your photograph might not look like you at all because of, let's say, a recent beard grown or some tanning or something. So it's preferable to get a new photograph clicked. And also for people who are taking any sort of interview for the first time, it is definitely advisable to take 2 or 3 mocks to see how you behave in the interview situation. Even if you do it with your friends, you can tell them to give you feedback regarding your body language and maybe some weird hand gestures that you use or weird terminology that you start using in the interview stress kind of situation. And also it's preferable that you read previous interview experiences so that you will familiarize yourself with the entire interview process. Okay, now before going to the UPSC, these are things which are very simple, but sometimes, trust me, before going to the interview, they become really difficult because you might certainly develop insomnia just before the interview and you might not be able to sleep at all. But try to get a good night's sleep before the interview. Also, if you have the morning slot, do wake up early and read the newspapers. So it is very important. Also the dress code. Now for gentlemen OTs, I do not think the weather permits you to wear a blazer at this stage and you might look out of place. So you can just stick with a shirt and trousers. Try not to do very loud colors. Although at this stage I would like to tell you that there is no set dress code as such. If you're comfortable in what you're wearing, you can definitely wear whatever you want to in the interview. Now for lady officers, candidates, I personally would recommend a sari unless you're too uncomfortable in it or you feel that you will not be able to carry it well, because it is a formal situation. And even in the academy, once you become an officer, in any sort of formal situation, you are expected to wear a sari. Okay, if you are going with a salwar kameez, there's nothing wrong with that. But please try to look for a salwar kameez which is a little more formal looking. Western formals, okay, I worked in London before and I was very comfortable with Western formals, working in a very westernized environment, but I personally will not recommend it. However, having said that, again, I would repeat, if you are comfortable with it, your dress is not going to make or mar your interview. But this is just to be on the safe side, because you do not want too much attention drawn to your dress, rather you want attention drawn to yourself. So if you're wearing something which really stands you out, it might just sort of cloud your performance, it might just cloud your answers. So you don't want that, and hence I'm recommending you to be more conservatively dressed. Now do not go to the interview on an empty stomach. You do not know your slot number, you might have to wait a lot, but also avoid overeating or having a heavy meal. Okay, now before going to the interview hall and right when you reach, there are certain things that I want you to know. First of all, people say that a morning slot is better than the afternoon slot. And they also say that if you're the last candidate in the afternoon slot, you are probably doomed. But again, please, these are very bad misconceptions. There is nothing like that at all. In the interview in which I got 240, I was in an afternoon slot and I was the last candidate to be interviewed by the board. So there is nothing like that. Those people sitting in the board are also seasoned enough to understand that this is an important occasion, and they also want to select the best candidates to be future bureaucrats. So they are not going to make the decision based on the fact that they are tired. So please don't worry about morning, afternoon. Please don't worry about which number you're going on. Even if you're the first candidate, you can get a very high score. Even if you're the last candidate, you can get a very high score. Now, when you're reaching the interview hall, you should be prepared to wait for 1 to 3 hours for your turn. Like I said, I was the last candidate. I had to wait for a very long time. So you should have something mentally prepared what you're going to do in the interview hall. Now, after around 30 minutes, you get to know your board. Now, again, this has a lot of mixed feelings. A lot of you would have known a little bit about the board, you would have misconceptions or preconceived notions about boards. But I would like to really request you, please do not let those preconceived notions, affect you. Because what happens is that I've seen people who, had a very bad perception about a particular board, ended up getting that board, and then ended up, ruining their interview just because of the preconceived notion that if this board comes, they will definitely get ruined in the interview. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So please, I know it is difficult, but please don't let the name of the board affect you. Now, what you can do while sitting there, you can read the newspaper, you can read your notes, you can talk to others, do whatever you feel like doing, which makes you comfortable. Now, a perennial question is whether to ask or not to ask what the interviewers are asking. Now, personally, for myself, because again, I am a very social person, I talk a lot, it was absolutely impossible for me to not talk to people in the interview hall, and it was absolutely impossible for me to not ask what the interviewers are asking. So, there is nothing wrong with it. But again, I will like to warn you, if you ask around what the interviewers are asking, there will obviously be questions which you will not be knowing, especially the factual variety, and that can really put a lot of pressure on you. So if you are the kinds who you feel will not be able to handle the pressure, if you get to know what they're asking and you don't know it because you have no means of finding it out, because you won't have internet, you can only talk to each other. If that is the case, please don't ask what the interviewers are asking. But another thing I would like to point out is that the interviews go very, very differently for different candidates, even in the same board. So I don't know how the interviewers ask the questions. Basically, it's more like a conversation, and one thing leads to another, and you just end up having the whole interview. So I've seen like somebody would be asked, somebody from Delhi in my year was asked a lot about Delhi architecture. Now, being from Delhi myself, I also got a little worried that I might be asked about Delhi's architecture, and I have more than a touristy interest. I have absolutely no idea about Delhi's architecture, but I was not even asked a single question about that. So the interviews go fairly differently. Also take some change to have tea or coffee, and also take some biscuits in your bag. You might have to wait for a very long time. You might end up feeling very, very hungry. So having a little snack is always helpful. Okay, in the battlefield. First of all, that is why I put the word, don't think of it as a battlefield. It is just a way for them to get to know you. Just treat it as a formal sitting where you are just having a sort of conversation with certain seniors. That is what the mindset should be when you go to the interview panel. Okay, especially to those people who have not seen an interview board before, it consists of 5 board members, including the chairperson, and there will generally be at least one woman member on the board. Then there are other members. Okay, especially for people who have not seen the board. So what happens is, this is like, let's say, the kind of table that they are sitting on. Here is the chairperson, and here you have 2 members here, and you have 2 members here, and your chair is typically here. This is you. Okay, now certain things about basic courtesy. First of all, before entering the interview the room, please check the time and make sure that you say good morning or good afternoon according to the time. A lot of coaching institutes will tell you that because there is a lady member, let's say there's a lady member sitting here, you wish the lady member first, then you wish the chairperson, and then you wish the other members. Now, personally, what I did also, and now having worked in the government, I believe also, there is always a chairperson of a meeting, and that chairperson is wished first, and that chairperson deserves the highest amount of respect from you. So I personally wish the chairperson first, irrespective of the lady sitting in the panel. So what I used to do was, I used to say like good morning sir if it's a chairperson, then good morning ma'am to the lady member, and then good morning sirs. It's a little longer than the conventional good morning ma'am, good morning sirs. In the government also, you will see, if you are with a district magistrate, district collector, you will always wish them first, irrespective of, let's say, a lady officer also sitting beside them who is lower in rank. So this is basic bureaucracy. Now also, only sit when you are asked to sit. So it's a good idea to just keep standing there till they ask you to sit. It signifies some amount of respect towards the board. And also while leaving, please thank everyone and then leave. So this is just basic etiquettes. So some normal things which I don't even need to say. You should be confident, you should be honest. Please listen attentively. Now, there was a question which was asked to me, how formal should we be? Okay, you have to be relatively formal. It is a very formal setting. Bureaucracy and the government in general is very hierarchical, no matter whether we like it or not. And the interview panel, interview board is not the place where you start to try to change it. So respect the bureaucratic norms, be relatively serious, because also it is very serious that you want to get into an elite service of the country to serve the people. So don't try to take it in a very jocular manner. So, but having said that, it doesn't mean that you have to be extremely timid or very petrified, or if you are the kinds who speaks very informally with people, like I also do, you don't need to worry that much. Just try to make an effort that you should not appear very informal, but you have to be reasonably formal. Even if you speak with a relative informal tone, that is totally not an issue. Now, maintaining eye contact, you definitely have to try to maintain eye contact. Now, it is also a good idea to rotate your contact in between. I do not mean that you keep doing something like this to the board. That is very distracting. But once in a while, if this is the person who's asking the question, once in a while you also look at the other board members, especially the ones sitting right next, because they are also listening to you. So that's again a way of engaging them in the interview. Now, be concise. Answer only what is asked. I generally used to have a 40-second rule. None of your answers should be more than 40 seconds. Nothing that you want to say is cannot be explained in 40 seconds. If they want to ask for a clarification or they want to ask for more details, they will ask you. So please don't try to give them a sermon of 3 minutes. Now, I would like to quote the interview of Mr. Supreet Singh Gulati. He is a 2008 batch IAS officer, and he posted this on his blog, which really inspired me. I just want to show this to you, so to see how much attentiveness he had during the interview. So the board member asked you, what do you know about the state of entropy? So he says, I don't know, sir. Okay, for those of you who don't know, entropy is a word of physics, and Mr. Gulati had a physics optional. So the board member obviously was surprised, and he said, you don't know what entropy is? So Mr. Gulati said, sir, entropy is a state of disorder of the system, but I don't know the term state of entropy. So the point here is, and he got very high marks, the point is that look at his attentiveness. So he has caught on to the word state of instead of just answering what is entropy. So you may or may not be able to have this level of state of attentiveness, but do try to pay a lot of attention to what the interview board is asking. Okay, I don't know. What about that? Please learn to say I don't know to questions on which you know nothing about. There is nothing to be ashamed of. I've covered this in the first video also. There is nothing to be ashamed of. There is nobody in this world who would know anything and everything under the sun. So there is no harm in accepting that you don't know it. Or another version is that I'm sorry, sir, I should have known, but I do not remember. There are many times in the interview where you are asked simple questions which seem to have slipped your mind because of the pressure of the interview. Happens to all of us. Again, you don't need to worry about it. Okay, another thing is about guessing. A lot of times you want to guess in the interview, but in case you are guessing, it's a good idea to say, sir, I don't remember, but I think it is so and so. Or you can directly ask them, sir, may I guess? So because it shouldn't look like you're trying to deceive the interviewers by showing them that you know something while you actually don't. That's not such a good idea. Okay, again about the formality bit. Please speak in formal language. You are not sitting in a cafe with your friends, so please do not use acronyms. Avoid them, especially like PUBAD, MEA, PM, which are not lengthy otherwise. So Ministry of External Affairs, Prime Minister, that is the right thing to do. Also, don't laugh out loudly. Again, just remember that you're not in a cafe. Although obviously, please smile in the interview. That's always good. Also, show seriousness about the interview. They may laugh at your answer, but please don't join in. So I remember I was being asked in the interview board about superstition, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but the entire board burst out laughing. But that I just sat there smiling. Okay, you can smile, but you can't laugh at your at sort of your own answer, because obviously I wasn't joking. I answered in all seriousness. Anyways, I was also asked about in one of the comments about flexibility and rigidity. So I need to clarify this. In my first video, I told you that you have to have a view, you should have a view, and you should be prepared to defend it if there are cross questions or counter questions regarding that. Having said that, it does not absolutely mean that you have to be rigid. In case during the interview, the interviewers give you an argument and you do get convinced that your answer was or your view was incorrect because of certain facts you didn't know or certain points you didn't consider, or basically lack of understanding or information, please be absolutely sure that you have to change your view. There is absolutely nothing wrong in it. I have done this in my interview as well. The smartness or your intelligence lies in realizing when you have to be rigid and when you have to be flexible about your view. Please don't be arrogant in answering, even if you're 100% sure. So if somebody is pointing out a counter view, or if somebody is saying something contrary to what your belief is, even if it pertains something to your subject and you're very sure about it, please don't look or seem overconfident or arrogant. That is something which would put off anybody in general. So, and the interview board is no different. So these are basically some tips. Some of it is quite, might be quite trivial to people who have already attended the interview. But I just thought that, especially for first timers, this could be slightly useful. Thank you.